Boom. Everybody, welcome to Doodles to Deadlines. This is a podcast where we like to talk about the creation of comic books, the struggles and everything that we've gone through, Drew, myself, um, kind of like how we structure things and how we like to see them, how we see things in our head versus and like how we put it down on paper. Um, we have quite a few things that we're going to go through here. At the bottom of the screen here, you're going to see a link to forgelorecomics.com. That is where Drew has a profile. I have a profile myself. That's where future titles will be placed, so that you can see those there. There will also be links to a print on demand where if you want to purchase any of the books or anything we put together. Currently, right now, Drew has a sketchbook on that page. You can see the pages of the sketchbook. Something you like to own, you can go ahead and click that link, and it will go ahead and you can get yourself a copy of it. As a guest this week, we have Daniel Ryle. He is an author. Um, Below, you're going to see a link to his website. It's danielrylejr.com. Yeah, right there, down below. We'll get that up for you, so you can visit him and you can see what he's done. And what we're going to do, the reason we brought Daniel in is because he's an author. He's been writing his entire life. He has an incredibly unique perspective, given the fact that where he started and where he's at now, right? So his beginnings writing with Drew in comic books. He also is a person who has a love for comic books and cards and magic and video games and anime, all the stuff that we encompass in this podcast. It's one of the reasons we brought him in. He's also happens to be a very dear friend for a billion years for the both of us. But I think he will share a unique perspective on this particular podcast because we're talking about structure and how we put things together. And I want him to give a writer's perspective. So one of the first things we're going to start talking about is how we prefer script layouts, right? So a writer is going to write the script from a very specific angle, and not all writers are the same. Certain writers are going to do one thing one way and another way. I'm going to let Drew start first. And Drew, if you could go ahead and talk about how you like your scripts laid out from your writer. Now, let's take in mind, Drew's had a few writers. Right now, I'm not going to talk about his book until he gets more of that out there, unless he wants to talk about himself. But right now, I think you're currently writing your own, right?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, we got a little. Okay, good. We had a little lag from you there. Yeah, so go ahead, Drew.
Yes, I'm writing my own script. So obviously I worked with Daniel very early on, which was awesome. He's my first writer ever. So it's always great to have Daniel on to tell people not only about the beginnings, but about how different it's changed over the years and how he looks at things differently. I've always been a fan of very loose script writing. Daniel and I worked on the scripts together, and probably because of that, I'm not real good with people just telling me everything that I need to do. It is more of a collaborative thing. It's one of those things where we were very collaborative. We collaborated on all the characters, all the scenes, and kind of how we would both picture it together, versus where I'm just reading a script and I've got no communication with the artist and I'm just trying to interpret everything through words. So that very rigid style of script writing, a lot of people deal with it all the time, especially when you're taking on projects from outside sources. That's what you get a lot of. You don't have a lot of communication with the writer. They're not your buddy. They're not your friend. They're not somebody you know. They're just somebody who gave you a job. And especially when I worked on a few children's books, it was all very rigid. It's, hey, this is the scene. This is what we're doing. This is how I want it set up. And your liberties are there, but they're less liberties than you would get if you were working with someone. So I prefer more collaborative.
Okay. So I remember back long time ago, before I knew either one of you guys. And I'm going to give you I'm going to give you a chance here, Daniel, just to comment on that. But the reason I wanted to mention this is because um, anecdotally, with what Drew is saying is that um, like with big companies like DC, Marvel, you had writers, you had pencilers, you had inkers, you even in a lot of cases had guys who did backgrounds for you. You had colorists, you had all these different departments doing different things, and you were brought in to do one specific thing. Now, even towards the end of the 90s, when I was trying to get involved in that myself, these companies were now looking for groups, right? They were looking for teams. So it became more of a collaborative thing. So you kind of wanted to know the guy working with you, and you kind of wanted the buddy working along with you. Now, Daniel,
Yeah,
how how involved do you like to be now? Like I said, for many years now you've been writing for your own purpose, right? It's been
sure.
like your thing. You're like, I have a goal, I need to make this book. I don't You would look for outside somebody to bounce ideas off of, but you
Sure.
didn't have to really collaborate with another person. So I would like you to speak a little bit to your collaboration with Drew, and kind of where your head was at then as opposed to now when you're in collaboration. um how involved you want to be on both sides of that. I know it's a lot, but just I kind of like to see where you were then and where you were now as far as collaborating and how you want to work with your artist as far as comic books go.
Sure. But first, I'm good since words matter. How I know it's very, very writery of me to say, but I'm not an author yet. It's a goal. I'm not
Sure.
published as of now, so I consider
Sure.
myself a writer with experience and things that I've done and tried. But author is not what I would define myself as yet. Hopefully soon. That's the goal. But
That's fair.
now, in terms of like how much I like to be involved, so like when I first was attempting to do comics and stories, like I wrote it as a story. So when I worked with Drew, a lot of times I might have already had something written out, which could have been more book format. And then we tried to then alter it together to fit more of a comic book style, which was a lot of fun just because you're kind of seeing it come to life from the words, which is kind of cool. And because I knew Drew and I also know like what he's capable of, I didn't mind that back and forth collaboration. I would say as I've evolved in terms of my own skill sets, like my job is to write, their job is to draw. So I'm much more where like when I even in a comic book format, like I break it down by panels. Now, I'm not saying like I would never, because I'm not the artist, I would never say, "Hey, this is how it has to be done 100%," because I think that's arrogant. I would do it as I see it, like because where I say certain words, how I say certain words, the impact I am trying to create in those moments when I'm trying to build tension or certain emotions or levity, like that's going to come through based on the way in which the words are also coming across the panel. So like I'm very much more, I guess I'm a little more rigid, except the difference is I wouldn't say like it has to be this way. Because if the author's like, hey, this is all really good, but if I draw it like this, I think it's gonna get it across better. I'm open to the change. I'm because I'm but I like now doing comics more in panel format because I can see it in my head of what I'm trying to build for the story. If I it honestly it takes far too long to write it in book format and then try to transition it to comic format because I also have a lot of faith in the author, excuse me, in the artist. So if the artist, if I trust them that they're going to know how to draw it, it's going to look fantastic, they're going to display things, I don't mean they're going to, however they do the armor or the cityscaping, or I have no really say in that. I don't care because I trust them to do it. And I try not to overplay my hand in that sense. So that's how I kind of gauge it, where it's like, look, this is how I like the story to progress. trust me to make the story worthwhile. I will trust you to make it look awesome. And,
Now,
and that's
sorry.
no, and that's kind of like how I work, except with the option of collaboration if he or she has a better idea, or if something doesn't seem right, and then we work it out.
So, Drew, listening to how Daniel is describing how he sees it when he's laying these panels out, he does it panel by panel. Now, is that are those confines you could work within, or would you need somebody to go? Would you need somebody to write it in book, more of a book style, where they describe the scene and they describe the they give you dialogue, and then they kind of let you go from there? Is it too constrictive for you to have panel by panel, or you did say you like that more open format, but let's narrow in just a little bit on how open that format is for you.
Yeah. So now, in context, when Daniel and I were collaborating on this was his original story. From like, we tried, what we were doing at the time was taking an original story that he had told me about that we both loved and adapting that to be a comic book. So you're right in the fact that it was way more collaborative than I would expect it to be nowadays. Especially like, I just knew so much more about the story before we even started on the comic book.
And
You
that
know what I
also
mean?
allows me to trust you. That's why
Yeah.
it was easy.
Yeah. It was very easy. And that's so you're right in the fact that I wouldn't look for it to be that loose now. If I was like, I would never expect, if I got a job to do a comic book, I wouldn't expect someone to be on the same level that me and Daniel were. I do expect quite a bit of um, freedom, just because, like, I would still want a panel breakdown, but like, you might have something sequenced. Like, we were talking about it last week, Jimmy. You might have something sequenced where you're like, okay, I want a man throwing a child in the air, and a woman walking a daughter down the street, and then we're going to show a cityscape in the background and all these people doing this stuff. Now, whether I choose to do it in that exact order or to do it all at once, like, I would like the freedom to do that. I would like to be like, okay, well, I could do this in 3 panels, or I could do it in 1. Like, what do I feel like helps the flow of the story better? um and as long as the writer is good with that kind of, like, me making some of those decisions. Now, obviously, I wouldn't just, like, if it's not somebody I knew, I wouldn't just draw it and be like, hey, this is it. Like, kick rocks, I don't care if you don't like it. But
So
like,
so let's okay.
a lot of it is done in the storyboarding phase, though. Like, we would go through, so like, if your writer writes, then what you do is you break it down as a storyboard. And when you break it down as a storyboard, it's a lot easier to iron out those little details that somebody may have, like, oh, I don't like how you did this transition, let's do something else. So there's a little more back and forth. But with bigger companies, you might not get that back and forth. It might just be like, boom, here's a block of text, this is what you're doing. Like,
So when
kick
you're looking at
rocks.
that, when you're looking at that, um, so one of the things you want to try to avoid is going back and redoing pages and panels, right?
Yes.
That's one of the things you really
Yes.
want to avoid, right? So I ran into that with my last comic book. I had 20, no, 46 different things that I had to go back and re-alter, right? It was a big deal. It's very difficult. I ended up getting it done. But when you walk into a storyboard, that's open ended, right? It's like, oh, well, we could do this, this, or this. How how many alterations do you walk in with in your head versus how open you're going to be, right? Because let me rephrase that. So when you walk in, you go, I have in my head so many ways I'm thinking about doing this, and you don't know the writer, So the writer may hate all three of them. Now, at any point in this, are you going to stand your ground, or are you just going to go, tell me how you want it, and I'll storyboard it again, right? So, is there any rigidity to, because you don't want to just sit there? You can't focus on one page forever. You just can't. So,
Yeah,
um,
it's interesting when it comes to, it's all about, like, sometimes you work with good people, and sometimes you work with people that suck. And
sure,
every once in a while, you have to work with somebody who sucks, and that's part of it. Like, oh, hey, I like it, but I don't like it enough. I want you to change it. Oh, hey, I like it. And it just depends on how much you're willing to take before you're willing to walk away. So, like, every artist, every writer, every creator has a breaking point, and a lot of that has to do with how is the job paying you? Is the job not paying you? Are you waiting to make this thing, and then hopefully you're going to get part of the return? There's a big difference between, like, oh, hey, I paid you $3,000 up front to do this job, like, why are you bitching about it? And like that, compared to, like, oh, we're going to make this thing, and then we're going to possibly make money later. So if you're doing
so
it pro bono, there is much less that I'm taking. If you've already paid me, like, I'm taking quite a bit more. There is a point where I might not take it anymore. I'd be like, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm not the right guy for you. But
yeah,
it takes a lot to get to that breaking point, because I've had, so like when I worked on children's book, Freddie and Friends, a few years ago, um, I had to redesign the characters a couple times, and that's always irritating when you feel like you've done what the guy wanted, but, like, it was one of those things where he wanted them to be a little less anime and a little more cartoon. So I had to really kind of adapt a little bit more. And so it took a little back and forth, but for the most part, after that initial phase where I was a little frustrated, the rest of the book was pretty smooth. I had to add a couple things at the end. I had to add a river and, like, a couple panels here and there, but it wasn't enough. He ended up paying a little extra because he wanted extra images. Um, but
so
for the
good.
most part, for the most part, you just have to, as an artist, as a writer, as a creator, you have to decide if it's worth it to you. Like,
So
because sometimes the money's worth it,
sure.
and sometimes it's not.
So this is a great transition to something I'd like you to talk about, Danny. So
Sure.
you've been writing forever, and when you began the writing for your book, right, you ran into a lot of this, right? So I want you to speak. What I mean is writing, rewrites, cutting, adding. You went through quite a bit of this, and I don't necessarily know if you want to go through every aspect of it, but there is a level of frustration that comes with creating something in your head that, in your head you're like, this is fantastic. This is some of my best stuff. And then having um, somebody who's more professional at it go, well, let me break down this for you. And I'd like you to move some things around, or I'd like you to change these things. Now for us, for artists, I think it's considerably easier because we can redraw and reformat a frame or a page. For somebody like you have 400 pages that you might have to rearrange, right? And then you got to figure out how you're going to do that. So, um, you know, if you could just talk a little bit to, um, because I was asking Drew about thresholds, right? At a certain point, you're just like, no, But with you, they're not. You're like, you don't have, you don't start with an agent, you don't start with anything. You start with an idea, and you're not getting paid anything. So this is all your time. Um, So is there for you, and I'd like you to go into a little bit of your, the rockiness of it, um,
Sure.
but ultimately end in, was there a breaking point where you were just like, I just have no idea if this is something I'm going to do?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. I would say, honestly, the first thing I would say is if you want to at least get into the industry or even have a, let's reword that. If you want to even have a chance at getting into the industry, and you're not someone who's already a name that's out there, because then it's easy because you already have your followers that are going to buy your stuff anyway. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're brand new and you're trying to get into this industry, particularly if it's novels, for example, it's like less than 1%. We'll make it. And and
That's tough.
so you you legitimately have to have no ego. If you are unwilling to take criticism and understand that, I don't think you'll make it. And in my opinion, I think having belief in yourself is paramount. You have to know that you can do it. I mean, and hopefully along the way, you should have had signals, whether it's your teachers talking to you at school and telling you, "Hey, this is really good," or "You have something here," or it's having test readers read your work. And I'm not talking about your best friend who doesn't know anything about writing. I'm talking about an actual someone who reads a lot of stuff. It's like, "Hey, this was good. Like, I think you might have something," or even like hiring a consultant. I mean, there are consultants out there whose literal job is to look at your work, see if it has plot holes, see if that's or the pacing is correct. Give you an example. Like I once had someone tell me a previous story that I wrote. They said this was a fantastic story and the characters were great and I loved all this stuff, but your best fight scene was in the middle of your book. And because of that fact, that makes the rest second half of your book not dry, but it takes away the climax. So so legitimately, I had to, in essence, rewrite 85% of my book.
So let's ask the question here now that we're at this point of the conversation.
Sure.
How did that affect you? How did hearing that, what did you have to do to process it, right? Because obviously it's kind of like in sales, right? You never say no, right? So when you get something like that, you're like, yeah, absolutely, I'll make these changes. But how did it affect you?
So here's the thing, right? You say it's like sales and you never say no, but that's not the case. I have spoken to a number of people in the industry, and there is a magnitude of arrogance from
Sure.
people who are creative because they think what they've done is paramount. It's amazing. It's the next Harry Potter or it's the next whatever else that they or I'm the next Jim Lee, whatever it's going to be, right? And so there's a lot of people who legitimately they take that pressure, they hear that, they don't absorb it at all. They think they don't know what
Well,
they're
and
talking about. I
hold
know
on.
this is
Daniel
amazing
froze
and
up there. Oh, there he is. Okay.
okay. So,
No, let's
but
say
for
you
me personally,
specifically. Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
So when I was told that, I mean, it's no lie, it was a gut punch, because my favorite scene in a previous work that I did, in essence, what had to be taken away. It was without question my favorite scene, and I mean, I know I've heard artists talk about like the things that you create. They're like
Yeah.
your children. They're like your children,
Yeah.
right? So it's like you put all
Absolutely.
this time and effort into it, and they're basically like that's
Yeah.
that's literally going to be disappeared. Like
Yeah.
that's no longer going to exist. And that was a gut punch. Like my heart hurt. So for me, to answer your question
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
about how I dealt with it, is I had a question to ask myself. Okay, am I good enough? Do I think I have something good enough to keep going? The answer was yes. Do I believe in myself enough? In going to, I think I'm going to make it. Still haven't, but like I said, I'm on my way, and I believe that I can do it. And lastly, do I have the capability to write this all over again? because between obviously regular jobs and this and that and family or whatever, all the other stressors of life, like do you have it in you? And for me, I looked at it as yes. Like I just recently talked about where it was, I'm a writer and I trust my artist to draw off its comics. Like I leave the drawing to him.
Sure.
I don't come at him. I invested time and energy into this person to tell me what they thought. And so I think I took it at face value. It's like that's their living, that's their livelihood. So I hope they're good at it. So if that's the case, I'm going to take what they say. I'm going to adjust. I'm going to adapt, and I'm going to move forward. Now, but it was a gut punch. Let me tell you, it was very difficult. But I told myself, I pretty much said, look, if they say this is the way it is, then that most likely means this will never see the printed page.
Right.
And
Which
I
which
want I
I was
want
going
to
to
be.
say, which speaks to what you were saying before with removing that ego,
Mhm.
right? So you want to remove the ego. So I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just
You're
trying to
okay.
tie it back into the fact that you were like, you got to remove the ego
Have
because
to.
you have this person doing this thing for you. You expected a different outcome, I'm sure, for them to go,
Sure.
wow, this is absolutely amazing. And then they were like, hey, by the way,
Yeah.
everything's got to change.
What to
And
but to speak on that, it did help that they said like, hey, like your characters, love your world building, good ideas. You have a lot of nuance here. So like, even though they said, hey, go rewrite the whole thing, but you don't just rewrite it with the same stuff, just
yeah,
different. And I'm like, oh, okay,
yeah,
I'll get right on that. It's
right.
okay, no big deal. And yeah, that was brutal, but honestly, I can openly say, because I was willing to take that heat now,
Mm-hmm.
I have 100% become a better writer, because I've learned more about pacing. I've learned more about like the beats of the book, so to speak. I've learned more about how to properly build my outlines, so that way when I'm building my outlines, I'm like, hey, is this fight too good here? Does it need to be later? Like where are my tension? Where are my tension points in the story? Where's my linchpin point in this story? Like what's my inciting incident? Like, so it forced me to re-dive into what writing actually is in just story building. So because I took, basically I was like Rocky, you get knocked down, you got to
Yeah,
get back up.
yeah, I
And
can put it up.
so, yeah, that's right. And I'll take the hits, and then, but as long as you learn from it, and that's
Now,
where taking the ego out helps.
so people can real quick. Just I have one question, and then Drew, please. My last question to that, just so the audience can get a perspective. What kind of how long has this been? Because when you talk about it like this, it sounds like it's a very short process, And I know, but when you say it, because you go through it like step by step, you're like da da
Yep,
da, and then I did da da da, and then I did da da da, right? How
sure.
long with your project? Like I said, we won't talk about that, but with the project, how long a journey has this been?
I mean, when I first got some of the ideas, it was 10 years ago plus.
10 years.
And so, but that's fragmented, right? That's like certain ideas, certain concepts. I found certain authors that I fell in love with, and it was like a whole new genre, that world opened up to me. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And so then I kind of started making my own ideas, my own twists in my head. So this has been a process. Now, it's been, when I got that gut punch telling me, "Hey, guess what? Rewrite everything." That honestly came maybe 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and then it took me. Now, fortunately, I did invest the time after that happened, because before I was writing very fragmented. I didn't have a schedule. It was only when I had sparing moments and a lot of things. But when I heard that, I said, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to sit down and I need to do this. And it still took me maybe another 9 months to rewrite the whole manuscript. And that's with a full-time job and everything else. So, and I was really putting in the work. And even then, like, the journey doesn't end. I mean, I've still had alterations and other things happen after the fact, but to at least get it back to the new version, so to speak, it was
Sure.
another 9 months on top of that of consistent heavy writing.
Drew, you had a question?
Well, it really speaks to how much of a grind being a creator can be. Is like you have to be, I think the thing that all young creators should understand is you have to be very, very tenacious. It's your second shot is always going to be better than your first shot. So like when you go and you write your first book, like if you just go straight back to back and write that book again, a year later, it's going to be better because everything you learned from that first book, everything you learned while you were drawing your first comic book, like you can see an artist, especially a young artist, um, you can see their progression is crazy. Like from one book to the next book. Now, when you get older and you've been drawing for a really long time, the progression is much smaller, but you will still see a progression. Even artists at a very high level, there will be, and you can see when an artist is really engaged and when an artist is like he doesn't like it as much. There's definitely you can do case studies of guys and go through all their work if you wanted to. I don't know why you like that's a lot of extra time just to look at.
Sure.
Like if you were to take somebody like Jim Lee, for instance, and
Mm-hmm.
go, okay, I'm going to look at every book he's made since 1990. Like you'll see the progression. He did progress. He did get better, but you can see where he had a real love for the project and where he's really working at peak ability. And there's definitely times where you could see he just didn't, he was trying to get the pages done. It was a grind to him. And even though he's great, like you can see it in his work, like he wasn't enjoying it as much at this time. And we spoke about how you don't always enjoy your work, but you have to get it done. You like there is a progression to everything. And Daniel's talking about rewriting an entire book. Like that is just an amazing amount of dedication. When your first book, you're thinking, oh, okay, the manuscript's finally done. Here we go. We're going to move to the next phase. The next phase is me publishing this book, even if I have to self-publish it. Then you get this information and it's like, oh, wait, I don't want to self-publish this because now I'm looking at it and saying, okay, if I self-publish it and it's not good enough, it's not going to matter. So like, maybe I just rewrite it. And then there's a back and forth in your head where you're probably sitting there thinking to yourself, do I really just want to rewrite this whole story because of what one person said? Is that, do I believe what they said? And that's the tough thing, because it is, when you talked about your children, I explained it last week. An artist, it's when I draw, I'm putting a piece of myself in everything I draw. And there's pieces that you put a lot more of yourself into, like that you hold up and you say, this is the pinnacle of my drawing ability. This thing that I've created, this is great.
Sure.
And then when you look back and you go, oh, well, that was significantly better than my other
Sure.
work. And then my other work, because I made this piece, my other work all started raising to this level. So even though you make a book and it doesn't go anywhere and it doesn't do anything, like you're raising your level. And by the time you make that next book, by the time you go through the process of those changes and rewriting your entire book, you've achieved a higher level. And
Sure.
that's the creative process that's so hard when you're a young artist to really to handle, is that
Sure.
that failure is part of the journey.
Well, you learn the most from failure.
So I'll speak to that a little bit. So when I did Toshio, it was God, how many pages did I draw? 84. I think I did 84 pages. So I had the wrong idea of how many pages went in a book at the time, which is why I was able to break it up into 3.5 books. But so here was my biggest struggle. I'm speaking directly to what Drew was just talking about. My biggest struggle is as I from starting the beginning of these pages, I grew as an artist, right? I got better. I got better and better and better. Now, I thought the initial all 84 pages were going to be one comic book. So when I got 3/4 of the way through that book, I wanted to quit because I hated drawing every panel exactly like I drew it from the very first panel because was so I was so in it. This is all a head game. Everybody approaches it differently. Some of us have had a lot of some of us have had a lot of encouragement, and they've had a circle around them that have given them encouragement. I never really had that, so I did later on, but when growing up I never had that, so I've always had a lot of self-doubt when it comes to my work. Now, doing this book, I just decided to do it. It was just like, I'm just going to do it and get it done. I took on a lot more pages than I think I probably should have. But as I got better,
It was awesome, though. It was awesome.
But as I got better, I got more and more angry, and I wanted to do it less and less. Daniel can attest to that. There were days and weeks I would go without I would go without drawing anything because I knew I eventually had to go back and finish the book, and I didn't want to finish it. There were so many times when I said, I mean, I was 60 something, 65, 70 pages in, and I was like, I got to do this. I got to start over. I hate this. I hate it so much. I was so angry, and I was so like I was physically angry. You could see it in me. I was short fused with people. I was snapping at people. I was taking a lot of my rage out, and I didn't want to finish it. Now I'd go to my writer, and he's like, "No, just finish it. It's fine. The art's great." But what somebody else sees and what you see are completely different things. When you see an evolution, even if you hate your work and you see it get progressively better, you don't want to go back to doing it. And I think I told Daniel, I was like, I drew the beginning of this comic like a third grader. I didn't want to end it like a third grader. Now, I came up with all these ideas of how I would transition, say, hey, starting around page 60, I had to start drawing the way I wanted to. Otherwise, I was never going to finish this. Now, ultimately, I was like, these are way too many pages for one comic book, so I broke it up into different books. But I did finish all 80-something pages of it. And some pages look better than others because I went back. I asked, I think one of the pitfalls I had was going back and asking my writer, what do you think? Is there anything I need to change? And I thought he was going to be like, oh, maybe this. No. I had to go back through multiple pages. I had to go back and change many panels from the very beginning because he didn't like the way I drew the main female character early in the book as opposed to how I was drawing her at the end of the book. So I had to go back and change her, but I had to go back and basically erase panels and redo them. So I think it ties into a lot of this, but I will say one of the driving forces for me finishing was Daniel.
Thanks, buddy.
He pushed me to at least finish it and not throw it away. I was going to throw it away. I was going to delete everything. I was so sick of it. And there wasn't much the writer could do because he wasn't involved. He gave me pages and then he did his own thing. And I would never hear from him until he said, hey, I've got another book I wrote. I'm on book 4. What book are you on, Steve? But he wasn't like that. He was very nice. But what I mean is he was like, I'm on book 4. And I'm like, Jesus, I have 84 pages into book 1. What am I going to do here? So it was a real struggle mentally to finish the Toshio. I did not continue with Toshio. I did three full comics, and I don't want to move forward with it. One, because it was a struggle. Two, it wasn't a real piece that I was passionate about, but it was something that I needed to get done. And I'll tell you the worst part of the whole thing. The very worst part was I had no appreciation for it when I finished. I didn't care. There, Daniel was like, "You finished it. You have a
No,
completed book. You have a
it
printed book."
matters.
But you know, how many
Matters.
people,
It
so
didn't
many
to me.
people, so many people have attempted that and not followed through. Like,
Yeah.
so that now puts you in a class, and just like what we were talking about earlier, right? Like, I'm not an author yet; I'm a writer, and so
And
you're
I'm
published.
yeah.
So that in its own right is something worth celebrating, and it's noteworthy, and it also shows the dedication to the craft that you have, even though you yourself don't like the fact that you're watching your growth happen in real time in all your different pages. But it's a big deal, and I know that you struggle with that for
I
yourself
did.
personally. But like
I
I
still
will tell
do.
you, everyone's their own worst critic usually, um, especially the ones that have checked their ego, because then they know, they're not thinking they're the best ever. But the thing is, I will tell you this from a writer's perspective. If I had, let's say I write a novel, and it's in a manuscript format and it's ready to go, and I'm doing these things and all this stuff happens. If someone were to give me that manuscript and just say, "Hey, why don't you one more time proofread or read your own work?" I'm going to find something to change. Because there's going to be a sentence I'm not going to like. There's going to be maybe a certain fight scene I want to slightly alter, or maybe a little quippy statement that's funny that I'll change. So for a different reasoning. So like, it's dangerous to think you have to have perfection in order to get out there, or write your story, because you're always going to see a way to make your own work better. And it's dangerous, particularly for, it's a very self-fulfilling prophecy of never succeeding when you choose to always allow to always allow your own demons to stop you from
Yeah.
progressing forward.
So
Sorry about the face there. We were getting some weird feedback.
it's really important to remember for all creators, and this applies over comic books, like children's books, novels, whatever you're trying to create. I've done board games, I've done video games, all these kinds of things. Finished, not perfect. No one gives any cares about things that are not finished.
That's right.
Sure.
No
Well,
one
that's
can
what.
no one can criticize, no one can have an opinion about something that's not done.
Well, it's really
So
funny. Oh, sorry, Drew. I was just going to say
go
just
right
what you
ahead.
said though. Just what you said though, in terms of not finished. The irony is, so much criticism that creators will take will be from people who have no
Yeah.
ability
Yeah.
to create in the first place. And
Right.
and I think that's something to remember. Now, obviously, there are actual critics, and like that's different, because their world is to criticize and to like find like back and forths. But the masses, like on their best day, like on my best day, I'll use me, that way I'm not attacking anybody else. I draw stick figures, man. So like my best day, I couldn't even think to produce what you did with those 80 something pages. Wouldn't happen. I mean, I trace if I want something to look cool, because that's my artistic ability. My thing is words and imagination. It's certainly not art. So it's one of those things where you just gotta. That's why you got to be able to shrug off when most people talk, because most people they don't know, like they don't know how much blood, sweat, and tears you've put into this, and
Well, that was the opposite of what I was going to say.
Yeah.
That's the opposite of what I got. I got nothing but like everybody was like, "No, it's awesome." Blah 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 blah. And I'm like, "No, it's not. It's actually pure crap." So I don't want to be any part of it. I don't want anything to do with it. Um,
It's
so
not though.
that was tough. I just it was
But
this was a go ahead.
the thing is like with finishing projects, like it's kind of a snowball effect. When you finish a project, that gives you confidence, even if you don't like it. You don't have to like it, because there's always stuff. Even if I go back and I look at the children's books, I'll look at earlier work, I'll look at the submissions Daniel and I did when we were really young. Like there
20.
is, yeah, there is an appreciation I have for all of those projects. Everything that got finished, I
Yeah.
have an appreciation for.
It
And
also
everything
got you
that
who you
didn't,
are.
yeah, everything that didn't get finished, those are the things that I look back on with regret. Because at least you can look back at Toshio and be like, hey, it got done. I don't like what happened. I don't like the work necessarily, but you will be able to go back and be like, hey, at least it got done. Because there are, I mean, you look at my art history, there are littered with projects that never got done. And those are the ones that really, like, you ask yourself, why did I do that project? Why didn't I finish that project? What happened? Those are the things that you look at and you have real regret for. Now, granted, they teach you a lot of lessons. Like Daniel said, you learn the most from those failures, and
100%.
they built me into where I am now. But like, I still have regret for them. Like it never goes away because it is a project that failed. Like
Yeah.
it didn't even have a chance because I didn't even finish it.
Yeah.
Like
finishing's key. Like
yeah, finishing is so key.
So like that's the biggest thing. You got to finish. Like as a writer, like the key to writing. Guess what? It's to write. So there are no shortcuts. There is none of that. And you know, I'm scared of the world we're going into with AI because it's garbage, and it's like you can tell that's like a bot written. It's awful. The idea that they can convey human emotions is laughable. But the notion that you there's no shortcuts. If you got to do it, you got to put in the work, and you got to see for me, like for you guys, it's skill sets and it's type of drawing, and like I've heard all kinds of things where like drawing men and women, like they're different. Drawing horses, for example, like Jimmy doesn't like drawing horses, so I know that there's these
just take that shit from real life and you drop it in and then you trace it.
Okay,
That's what I did. I did that.
So there you go.
That's what you do, baby.
You can't draw a horse. Give me a break. Horse.
So like,
Come on now.
as a writer, like, you know, I have to, like, with wordplay and syntax and lexicon and going all these different routes and what sounds real. Like, I mean, I'll talk to myself and literally say the dialogue back and forth out loud. It's like, is this legitimate? Do people actually talk like this? And you go through this whole thing, but you got to finish it. And
Yeah.
like I know I'm not writing well, and I know that what I'm putting down in my computer is just the worst stuff that, in my opinion, I like. This is like, as a user reference, Jimmy used, oh, this is third grader crap. The difference is at least if you keep going, at least as a writer, push through the garbage, because eventually you can find your rhythm. Eventually you'll start writing good, and as the scenes keep coming, and then later go back to what you wrote as a third grader, and you can refine it and then get it back into working condition. But if you just close your computer and go, oh, I'll do this later, or I'm not feeling it today, or, oh, you know what, like, I'll do this a different time, it's okay if I don't do it. No, do it. Write through the pain, suffer through the garbage writing that you're putting down on paper, and then go back and change it, and then it'll be good.
And sometimes you just need to consume other things. Like sometimes you just need to be like, okay, I'm not writing well. Let me consume some media that's way out of what I'm doing to maybe freshen up my brain, to give me some new ideas. Because all of us creators, you run stale sometimes. Sometimes
Sure.
you've just drawn everything that you can think about. Sometimes you just, like Jimmy the other day when we were thinking about ideas, he's like, hey, ask your daughter what I should draw. like, hey, sometimes that's the, like, ask somebody else. Like,
I got the same question. I think I told him to draw. I think I told him to draw Captain America Magneto.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you did.
Yeah, yeah. And then I did the Captain
One Piece
Whitebeard or whatever he
character.
is
Yeah.
from
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, from
From One Piece.
um
Yeah.
I think that this is I was going to mention this earlier when Drew mentioned that I think the expression um progress not perfection is the I think that's what you were shooting for there. Um
Finish not perfect. It's
finish
a
not
saying that Jake Parker uses.
mm. I use progress not perfection. I can't say that I always follow it, but I do use it. I can't like I said I think the one thing that not enough people talk about, and I think is just so relevant, is your circle, right? Where you started and the influence that they have over you, right? So you get a lot of young guys and they're drawing this or they're writing that, and everybody around them is their best buddy. So everybody's like, "No, it's awesome! It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen." Blah 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 blah. Right? So as they start to move forward, they're like, "No, everything I have is the most amazing thing ever." Right? So they can't be told that no, hey, that doesn't work and that doesn't flow, that doesn't sound right, there's the pacing's off here. Like when somebody legitimately looks at it, not even necessarily professional, but when somebody who has at least an idea of what these things mean look at it, and then it devastates them and they just shut down, right? Because they don't know how to deal with it. And I mean that more to like a younger generation. Now, our generation, we just pushed through with stuff. We just did things. I mean, like I'm 49 and I still haven't give up the dream of making a comic. Now, I did make that dream come true. I did self-publish it, but I know I always put the caveat in there. Nobody says I should, but I put the caveat in there. I self-published it, but I did finish it, and I finally made it happen. But I think that says more to like our generation as people who just, regardless of whether or not life kicks you around or the critics hit you in the face or things are being broke down around you, you still pursue a dream, right? Daniel, you've been pursuing it for a long time. You had you had your book pulled apart and then you put it back together. Drew, you were struggling when you were younger, and as you struggled, things never happened and never happened. You kept pushing, right? So even later in life, when things like having kids and a family and things like that make it more difficult to pursue these dreams, these artistic dreams, because they're very very time consuming. Um, we still pushed forward and did those things, and I don't think it's talked about enough. Now I don't mean everybody talking about their feelings, but what I mean is I don't think it's talked about enough that like the younger generation, they just they give up on things so quickly. They're like, oh well, not everybody loved this, I quit.
Sometimes I think that inspiration is a fickle thing, and you can be very inspired for a little while and then not really be about the grind. And I think the grind is the thing that kills most people versus just failure. Because failure, like, you have a lot of times where you'll be riding high and things won't be received as well as you thought they would, and that doesn't always kill the dream as much as the grind does. Because when you're trying to pursue a career as an artist or a writer, like, you're putting in a lot of personal time, a lot of time that you could be spending doing a lot of other things, playing video games or going to the gym or spending time with your girlfriend or your wife or your kids. Like, so a lot of times when you have a family, you take time that is your sleep time or your entertainment time after the kids have gone to bed, time after your wife is already asleep, or you wake up early in the flipping morning, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and you work then. And that's where, but that's where you're really deciding, like, hey, I really want to make this thing
Yeah.
happen. And even if
Hold on.
it's not to
Yeah.
the level where I'm going to be a professional, but I
Right.
want to, I still want to do projects on the side. Like, this is my hobby. I love this thing.
Daniel, you wanted to say something?
I was just he touched on something which I mean he was talking about inspiration versus the grind, and I think it's not so for me. It's not so much inspiration because inspiration, like you're right, it's going to come and go. But I think the most thing actually is passion. Like because if you have passion for something, then the grind isn't going to feel as much like a grind because you're passionate. Inspiration is not passion. And so I think inspiration means, oh, I got this great idea. And if you're putting, what is it, the carrot before the horse, as they say, or the cart before the horse, where they're already thinking how successful it's going to be and how much money they're going to make and all these things. It's like, no, that's not how it works. Like you need to have passion for what you're building, because if you already make the assumptions of how things are going to go for you, that's very foolhardy. You need to you need to just have the passion of it, because the passion will give you drive, and the drive is how you get through the grind. And also when it comes to the grind itself, I think a lot of people might think it's cool to draw or to write or to do film or other, like at the creative types, like you're talking about, Drew. But what they don't understand the complexities afterwards. Like you can write a book, it's still not published. You can self-publish, but that generally means you're not going to get out there. So if you're going to go the traditional route, you legitimately have to spend all that time that you talked about writing, and then after that, you then have to agent hunt, and then after you have an agent, you then have to hope that your agent's going to fight for you properly, because you don't get to fight for yourself.
Yeah.
They fight for you, and they're the ones now trying to get a publisher to take your work. And so you're doing all of this on the possibility of maybe one day someone liking your work to then maybe one day have someone also agree to publish it. That is a hell of a thing to invest in. And inspiration isn't enough. You have to have passion and you have to have drive to fight through the lulls and the disappointments, and grit. You have to have grit.
Yeah. So I'm going to wrap things up here. We're getting right towards the end. Daniel, I'm sure we could talk about this for like another hour and a half. Honestly, to tell you the truth, we could
No
keep going
doubt.
on this. Thank you for showing up on the podcast.
My pleasure.
I loved hearing your perspective. Um, I'd love to have you on again sometime. Um, One of the things, so I think this is a fantastic podcast. We're going to talk a little bit more about some things here. We got to most of what I wanted to get to today. Very few things we didn't get to. One of the things we wanted to do before we ended the podcast today, we're not going to have really a discussion on it until all of us have seen the movie. But Drew saw the Odyssey today, and he wanted to throw his fresh thoughts out there. So Drew, before we close down here, why don't you give us your fresh thoughts on the Odyssey? And then once we get a chance to watch it, we can go and have a discussion about it. So go ahead.
So the Odyssey, I very much enjoyed most of the movie. It is very well directed, very well paced, very well. The actors were really good. I definitely think that because of some decisions that they made, as they didn't want to have CGI in the movie at all, they decided not to do that. That some of the stuff probably could have been done a lot better if you're willing to bend a little bit and use a little bit of CGI, so that like just a few scenes, and when you watch the movie, you'll see what I'm talking about. And if you are a fan of the story of the Odyssey, if you've seen the previous movie, or you've read the book, or you've listened to the musical, Epic the Musical, which is a very good musical that they actually did some animation for, there are a lot of the very mystical nature of the original story that is kind of pulled out of the story, and it's more grounded in realism, but not necessarily time period realism with a lot of the casting. I feel like the casting, and obviously once you see it, we can go into a little more detail, but the casting felt just like a needling, just like it was not necessary to cast certain people in certain roles, just because it was not really faithful to the original story, and just felt really unnecessary with the roles that they played. And I think that Hollywood in general does this, comic books do this, where they will do something purposely to make people irritated, to create buzz about it. And I think that negative buzz for everything is just negative. I don't like all generation is good generation. Like if people are talking about it, it's good. That's like Jimmy and I were talking about the fact that just because the Falcon became Captain America in the comics, which was not well received, then you make it a movie and you wonder why it's not well received. Like,
Sure.
it wasn't well received in the first place. So you made people irritated in the first place, and then you wonder why they're irritated again. Like, we didn't like it the first time. So, but anyway, that is the gist of what I thought about the Odyssey. I thought Matt Damon did a great job. I thought the movie was directed very well, and a lot of the set pieces were really good, and a lot of the actors did a really good job. The villain made you really hate him. So like, and some of the characters looked really cool, and they had a really good aura about it. So there was a lot of good things about it, but a lot to nitpick apart. And when we talk about spoilers and we talk about it in a little more detail once you both maybe we'll do the episode with Daniel, since Daniel
of the Iliad and the Odyssey. I've read them many times. So I'm a huge fan of Homer. Oh yeah. So yeah. You guys are always welcome to have me. I would love to come back. It's a great time talking about all this kind of stuff. The new
ones. We'd love to have you. So once again, so we're going to wrap everything up here. We're running over here a little bit, but Daniel, once again, thank you so much for being part of the podcast. Like I said,
my pleasure.
When we talk the Odyssey, if you want to come back, I know we have a few more things that we'd like to talk, pop culture wise, well, comic culture wise. And so anyway, I want to thank everybody for watching. Drew, thank you so much. Daniel, thank you so much. And we're going to record. We're going to drop a new episode every Monday. So if you guys could tune in and like and subscribe, we'd appreciate it very much. So thank you.